Right now, think about the last time you kissed someone. Maybe it was 5 minutes ago, maybe it's been 5 years. Either way, you didn't think twice about it. You just leaned in and did it. But here's something that should stop you cold. Nobody actually knows why humans kiss. Not really. Anthropologists have spent decades trying to answer a question that sounds too simple to be a mystery. And the deeper you dig, the stranger the answer gets. Because kissing isn't universal. It isn't instinct. And the real reason we do it has almost nothing to do with romance. Let's start with the assumption everyone makes. You probably think kissing is hardwired into human beings, some ancient bonding instinct baked into our biology since the dawn of the species. That's the story we've all absorbed from movies, from books, from 1,000 romantic comedies. Except in 2015, an anthropologist named William Jankowiak did something nobody had really done before. He looked at 168 cultures around the world, spanning every continent, and checked how many of them actually practiced romantic kissing. The number that came back should have made headlines everywhere, less than half. Something like 46% of human cultures studied had no concept of romantic mouth-to-mouth kissing at all before contact with the outside world. Entire societies existed for thousands of years without it. Not because they were repressed, not because they didn't have intimacy or affection. They simply never invented the behavior. Sit with that for a second. If kissing were truly a hardwired instinct, every human culture on Earth would do it. The same way every human culture cries, laughs, and gets scared. But it isn't showing up everywhere. Which means kissing isn't biology in the way we assumed. It's something closer to a technology, something that got invented in one place, spread through contact and conquest and trade, and eventually got mistaken for universal human nature simply because it became so common in the cultures that ended up dominating global media. So if it's not instinct, where did it actually come from? This is where the story gets uncomfortable, because the leading theory has nothing to do with romance at all. It starts with mothers and infants. For most of human history, before jars of pureed food existed, before teeth came in early enough to chew solid meals, mothers fed their babies by chewing food themselves and passing it mouth to mouth. This practice is called pre-mastication, and it wasn't rare. It shows up across cultures on every continent, and in some parts of the world, it's still practiced today. A mother would soften food in her own mouth and transfer it directly to her infant's lips. Anthropologists who study this behavior point out something important. That mouth-to-mouth contact wasn't just nutritional. It was one of the earliest bonding rituals between a parent and a child, wired into the nervous system as a signal of safety, closeness, and trust. Here's the theory. Some researchers believe that adult romantic kissing may be an echo of that infant feeding behavior, a leftover circuit in the brain originally built for a mother to bond with her child, later repurposed by adults to signal the exact same thing to a romantic partner: safety, closeness, trust. You're not inventing a new feeling when you kiss someone. You might be triggering one of the oldest bonding mechanisms your brain has, one that originally had nothing to do with attraction at all. That alone is enough to make you look at kissing differently. But there's a second theory, and this one is even stranger, because it has almost nothing to do with emotion and everything to do with biology working behind your back without your permission. Your nose is doing more work during a kiss than you realize. When two people get close enough to kiss, they're also close enough to smell each other in a way that normal conversation distance never allows. And smell isn't just smell. Buried in human sweat and skin oils are chemical signals tied to something called the major histocompatibility complex, a set of genes responsible for how your immune system recognizes threats. Researchers have found that people are subconsciously more attracted to the scent of partners whose immune genes are different from their own. Genetically speaking, that's a good thing. Offspring with more diverse immune genetics tend to have stronger, more resilient immune systems. Your body, without asking your permission, is using kissing as a diagnostic test. A quiet biological background check running while you think you're just being romantic. Read that again. The kiss you remember as one of the most emotional, meaningful moments of your life might partly be your immune system running a genetic compatibility scan on a potential partner. Romance, on some level, might just be evolution's way of making a lab test feel like poetry. Now here's where the story gets even more physical, because your mouth itself is an unusually sensitive piece of equipment. And that's not an accident either. The human lips contain one of the highest concentrations of sensory nerve endings anywhere on the body, packed with far more touch receptors per square centimeter than most of your skin. Evolutionarily, lips didn't develop this sensitivity for kissing. They developed it because sensitive lips help with eating, with identifying dangerous or spoiled food before it enters your body, with basic survival. Kissing may simply be a behavior that later hijacked an already existing, incredibly sensitive piece of anatomy and repurposed it for pleasure and bonding. Your lips were a survival tool first. The romance came later, riding on top of machinery that already existed for an entirely different reason. So if kissing isn't purely instinct, and it isn't universal, when did humans actually start doing it deliberately, the way we understand it today? The oldest confirmed written reference to romantic kissing comes from ancient India, from Vedic Sanskrit texts dating back more than 3,000 years, describing people pressing their mouths together and, in the words of the texts, inhaling each other's breath. Some historians argue this practice likely spread from South Asia into the Middle East and eventually into Europe through trade routes and military conquests, most notably following Alexander the Great's campaigns into the region. If that theory holds, then kissing as we understand it wasn't something every human culture invented independently. It was something that started in one specific place and spread outward, the same way a language or a technology spreads, carried by armies and traders rather than encoded into every human brain from birth. That reframes everything. The kiss you think of as timeless and universal might actually be closer to an ancient viral trend, something that caught on in one region and spread across the globe over thousands of years until it became so deeply embedded in certain cultures that later generations simply assumed it had always existed everywhere. But biology still matters here, because once the behavior existed, it clearly did something powerful to the human brain, or it never would have spread this successfully. Kissing triggers a measurable flood of oxytocin, the same hormone released during childbirth and breastfeeding, the hormone most closely associated with deep emotional bonding. At the same time, it suppresses cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone. In other words, even if kissing started as a cultural accident rather than a universal instinct, the human body responded to it so strongly that it got rewarded, reinforced, and passed down. Whatever its origin, the brain decided kissing was worth keeping. So, what's the honest answer to when and why ancient humans started kissing? The honest answer is messier than any romantic explanation you've heard before. It probably didn't start as romance at all. It may have started as a feeding ritual between mothers and children, later repurposed by adults to signal the same safety and trust. It may be partly your immune system running a silent genetic compatibility check disguised as intimacy. It's built on lips that evolved for finding safe food, not for finding love. And it may have spread across the world not because every human brain was born wired for it, but because one culture invented it and the behavior was compelling enough, biologically rewarding enough, to spread like wildfire across the ancient world until it became something we now assume has always been human nature. Next time you kiss someone, or even just think about kissing someone, you're not participating in some eternal universal instinct that every human who ever lived has shared. You're participating in something stranger. A behavior possibly born from a mother feeding her child. A behavior your immune system may be quietly exploiting for its own genetic purposes. A behavior that spread across cultures the way ideas spread, not the way instincts are supposed to. It feels like the most natural thing in the world. And maybe that's exactly the point. Some of the most human things we do were never really instinct at all. They were ideas that worked so well, biologically and emotionally, that they stopped feeling invented and started feeling inevitable.